Welcome back. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good
Good
afternoon.
Good
afternoon.
afternoon.
Hope all of you had some rest and breakfast or lunch, whatever you take.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Himanshu.
Yes,
So,
had lunch.
any question? Any pressing question which is bothering you, which did not allow you to take rest? Hello. I think Ranjan's mic was on mute. Okay, now it's okay. Right. No question? All are eager to have some implementation tips.
No question right now. You may proceed, sir.
Okay, sir. So, not triple, now it is 4C, C, 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 V, alliterations. So this repeat use of the same word is called alliteration in English. So conscious, curious, consistent, conservation of vitality. So how we can do that? We propose these 10 factors. We propose these 10 factors. So all in all, we understood that the toxemia increases the density of the blood. This we understood. And increase of the density means decrease of the speed and the heat both. So if we take an approach where we reduce the density in a balanced way, natural way, increase the speed also in a natural way, without much of innervation, increasing the load on the vitality, and also conserving heat in the thought process. So here, these three domains that you see on the screen are density, speed, and heat. Density is that input that we give to ourselves. Whatever we put inside our body, if the density of those food are well balanced and do not put extra load on our existing density of the blood, that would definitely improve the overall density and the health factor. The vitality will be conserved a lot in the way of managing the density. That's the first domain, which is this one. The first domain. We call it input matters. We use this word input matters in two ways. The matter, once it is a verb, others it is a noun. Input matters, RAWS, are the input matters, noun. And definitely input matters, where matter is used as verb. So RAWS, radiation, air, water, and S stands for solid food. Okay, there is a question from Soparna. Just let me get it. Good afternoon, sir. Suppose a person praises me for my behavior or for any reason, and I like that praise. But after some days, I came to know that he or she made a falsified praise. Then what should be my response in that situation? Is it matter or idea? So definitely it's not a matter at all, it's an idea. The praising and responding to the praise by liking it or disliking it. Both are ideas. Can you show the praise? Matter, identification of matter is very easy, Suparna. Just that within the matter, if the idea is hidden, that exploration may be confusing sometime. Otherwise, this one is idea for sure, because praise cannot be seen. The liking of the praise cannot be seen. This is happening here internally. So this is idea generated for sure. So we'll take again this question when we'll come to the relevant topic of heat or the mind matters. So let's continue our discussion on density. The input matters are these three: RAWS, radiation, air, water, and solid food. Will come itemized also. We'll come to the itemized aspect. Now the second domain has got speed factor, where we directly improve the speed. Speed means what? The internal circulation, the fluid that is flowing inside the body, that has got a speed, circulatory speed. So whenever we are toxemic, that time our speed of circulation get reduced because of the higher density. Do you identify this? Do you understand this? Anyone who is not able to understand this factor, what it is being discussed?
Yeah, I understand beautifully.
Thank you, sir.
In
So
speed activity matters, here T will be single or double T.
yes. Thank you. Thanks for mentioning that. It's double T. Double T. Let me change it right away so that the next batch can. Thank you, sir. So in your notes, this spelling error will be there. So here also the same matters. This word matters is verb and noun both. Activity matters and activity matters. So here we have three factors. Under this domain, we have three factors. S stands for spinal care. X stands for exercise. And sleep stands for sleep. Right. The acronym, the first acronym was RAWS, RAWS. Here, we tried to give some interesting acronyms so that it can be remembered. So if you look at the acronym, it is sex and sleep. You see, sex and sleep. Sex, sleep is the second domain. And the last domain, which is the heat or the mind matters. Both are equivalent actually. Mind is also formless, heat is also formless, equivalent we can consider. So here we have three factors. And the acronym is very interesting. Sex and RUM. Sex stands for sexual understanding. RU stands for rational understanding. M stands for mindfulness. So all in all, we have these 10 factors, which are radiation, air, water, solid food, spine care, exercise, sleep, sex, rational understanding, mindfulness. Right? So let's start with the first factor, first domain. First domain is the density, input matters. Now here the density aspect, before going to the itemized factors, let's try and understand what do we mean by the balanced density. The density of the body should not be too less, neither it should be too high for having a balanced or homeostatic health. Right, so what is that balanced density? Now, the density of any substance here is determined by the naturally assimilated water. naturally assimilated water. This process of assimilation, natural assimilation of the water, is known as osmosis. Osmosis. The natural assimilation of the water is known as osmosis, where someone is entering XYZ. XYZ is the name of the person who entered now. Anyway, so osmosis is a process where the lower dense goes towards the higher dense in an open atmosphere. Osmosis is a process where lower dense water or lower dense substance will go towards the higher dense area in open atmosphere. When it is an open system, this is an open system. So are you able to understand? The low density goes towards the higher density because of the atmospheric pressure. Atmospheric pressure on the lower side will be higher than the higher side. So you need not to go that deep into it, but just try and understand the water which goes inside the fruits through the roots is the osmotic water. Root doesn't suck it. Try and understand this. There is no sucking mechanism in the plants or trees which sucks the water. The water automatically sips in, assimilates into the plants. And that process of assimilation is the osmosis we are talking about. So that water is the purest water. That water is considered as the purest water. And that water determines the density of the substance. Right. So ultimately, that water is for the trees, it is a natural water, which is not enforced water. Similarly, in our body, whatever the water content is there naturally, continuous basis, what is the natural water content, that determines the density of my body or any organism's body. Right. If that density goes for an increment, we suffer the toxemic state. And even if it goes lower than what it should be, there is no number. We are not proposing any number here. Just try and understand the framework. If it goes below, then also we feel weakness, and that is also not a state of health. And if it goes higher, then also it is a toxemic state that we have already understood, right? So now what we are proposing here is ultimately the food, the purpose of the solid food is to compensate the requirement of RAW. Try and understand this. The purpose of the solid food. So solid food is also nothing but combined RAW, radiation, air, water. So we heterotrophs do have the capability to get directly RAW, but that doesn't compensate the complete requirement. For that reason, we need to have extra solid food, which are also combination of RAW. Right? So as much as possible RAW directly, if we get, the requirement of the solid food will come lessen and lessen. It will reduce. Because ultimately we require the raw RAW to our bloodstream. So starting with the radiation, why radiation is a conserving aspect for us? Because radiation directly goes to the bloodstream. Whenever we consume food undergoes a disintegration process in our digestive tract. Radiation directly goes to the bloodstream. Food goes to the bloodstream after the disintegration and assimilation in the blood. So every stage, every steps of these processes needs vitality. So whatever we are getting ultimately in the bloodstream from the food, we are getting directly from direct radiation. So this is the reason the direct access of the radiation conserves vitality. Direct bloodstream, right? And the type of natural, so what we are talking about here is the natural radiation. The configured, artificially configured radiations, we are not talking about. So type of natural radiations, there are three types of natural radiations. In this galaxy, the primary radiation is the solar radiation. The primary radiation is the solar radiation. So as much as we can expose to the solar radiation without irritating the skin, this is very important. Without irritating the skin, because the skin irritation is the voice of the organism and the indication that it's enough. Go back to the shadow. So we need not to be under the sun if we are having irritation also. So we need to be very mindful about the skin irritation within the sun. So it is very safer to access the sun radiation in the early hours as much as possible. Try and understand these walls and roofs are human creation. Let's reduce our obsession to stay inside the walls and roofs. As much as possible, if we can stay outside without irritating ourselves, is helpful for us in conserving vitality. So everywhere, every factors I'll be bringing in this term repeatedly, conservation of vitality, because the objective for all the factors is to conserve vitality. Because so far we are convinced that conserving vitality only will help us to maintain the homeostasis and reverse the chronic conditions, whatever we are suffering from. Now, artificially configured radiations are intentional initiative, idea-based aspect, and we need to be very cautious about it. For example, the Wi-Fi radiation, any electromagnetic field radiation, that MRI, CT scan. Somebody is unmute. Can we be mindful about this aspect, sir? Galaxy J4. XYZ. Right. So artificially configured radiations are to be observed mindfully, and it is better to stay away from the artificially configured radiation as much as possible. So these two aspects we need to understand. The natural radiation, as much as we can be, is better, and artificial radiation as less as possible is better. So artificial radiation includes all kinds of electromagnetic fields like CT scan, MRI, X-rays, and then this Wi-Fi radiation, mobile radiation. So at least that mobile device which receives the radiation, if we just stay away from that as much as possible, but definitely during the sleep, keeping the mobile at the next to us is a really risky aspect, because you are subject to artificial radiation and a receiver of the artificial radiation. Someone is again SB. Shankar Biswas, I guess. So, right. So artificial radiation, staying outside, we have we have covered. Now, sun basking or sunbathing. Sun basking or sunbathing. Staying outside includes the episodes of sun basking and sunbathing. Now, during the sunbathing, we need to understand that we need the particles, not the heat. We are outside for the sake of particles, not for the sake of heat. And particles means we should not block ourselves in a glass covered places thinking that I am sitting in the sun. Let me sit across the glass. It is not. You have to be open in the open space so that the particles can enter the pores of the skin. Right. So particles can enter the pores of the skin. That's very important. Now going to the next factor, air. Any question on the radiation? Any clarification or any doubt if you guys have? That this type. Okay, in the sunbathing, one aspect is protecting the head. Protecting the head, if we don't have much hair in the head, then again it's very meticulously we have to practice that we have to cover our head during the sunbathing. We can even cover it with a wet towel. Why? Because the head contains a lot of fragile neurons. With overheating, we will not be able to sense the irritation because it is covered with a hard shell. Because of this hard shell, the overheating of the neurons are not sensed. So we should ideally, if we have lots of hair, then we need not to worry about it. If we do not have, then we have to cover the head with a hat or cap or a wet towel. If you are sunbathing by lying down on your rooftop, then remember to cover your head, right? And
So,
this is actually, this has to be inculcated very meticulously, because this is the primary food that we can give to ourselves. It is not a casual thing, okay, once in a while we'll do it. Try to inculcate to be outside as much as possible as a religious inculcation. Yes, someone was saying something.
yeah, so
Ma'am,
early hours in the sense, is it before 10 a.m. or something?
yes. When the sun is not too strong. If we are not able to do it, we can do it for the sunset hours also after 4 o'clock, 4:30. Kind
Okay,
of.
but not the
Yeah,
noon
directly.
hours.
Noon hours is very risky. That risky in the sense that we are not in a habit of, because we are already desensitized in different voice of the organism aspect. So where the actual irritation is happening and we are innervating ourselves, that identification may come after 6 months of practice, not immediately. So it is better to go for the early hour and the evening hour in the starting period. And otherwise, try to be stay outside, being in the shadow, but stay outside, having less wall around, having less roof top, but shadow will actually help us to get a lot of radiation. So types of radiation I was talking about in this galaxy, the primary radiation is the solar radiation, and otherwise we have two types of radiation. One is the terrestrial radiation. Terrestrial radiation is the reflected solar radiation that comes from the other organism, from the earth surface and from the moon. We get the reflected solar radiation. And the third type is the cosmic radiation. So despite being the solar radiation as the primary radiation for this galaxy, but galaxy is this galaxy, every galaxy is a very tiny part of the whole universe, whole cosmos. So the third type of radiation is the cosmic radiation. That also has got definitely naturally a lot of impact on our well-being. So if we can stay outside, we get the benefits of the cosmic radiation also. So three radiations I talked about: solar radiation, terrestrial radiation, and cosmic radiation, right?
Kalyan, so
Now,
just one. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So, is sunlight also, sorry, is sweating also a kind of skin irritation, saying that it's enough?
yeah, so irritation means irritation, no assumption. Like if it
No,
is irritating you, then it is irritation.
no, sweating, like you said, sweating is
Yes,
a
yes,
form of
sweating,
eliminating
sweating.
toxins.
Are you asking about indication or irritation?
Indication.
Indication,
Indication of
yes.
sweating.
Indication, yeah, indication. So sweating is an indication, and sweating is a measure to cool down also if it is overheated,
Okay.
right? So yes, yeah. Some other person also was asking some question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, so I was just wondering because a lot of times you read in the newspapers or articles, and then all these skin specialists, they always keep saying that you should never go in sun without a sunscreen or anything at all. So what are your views? Because I understand what I feel is once you put something over your skin, the absorption is going to be limited or none. I'm not sure technically, but I'm sure it's going to make some difference. So what do you suggest in this
Yeah,
situation?
yes. Sunscreen is not at all recommended, and to avoid the confusion in the irritation, because irritation is the voice of the organism which is self-generated. Nobody has to tell you when to go back if you are mindful about your skin irritation. But initial phases, when we are not in a habit to go out sitting in the sun, that time it may be a confusing thing. That's why it is recommended to start these regular sunbathing in the early hours. So there is no risk of skin irritation.
So, what is the rationale behind saying no to the sunscreen?
What is sunscreen? Like it is like what is the rationale of putting sunscreen, if I may ask?
Yes.
So the only rationale I can understand is when you are actually going to have some sunburn. When you are in places where, for example, Australia, the sun is too hard on you. I mean, those are the only places where actually it could burn you out. I mean, if you are too long.
Yes. So the heat is to be avoided. If the heat is burning, then it has to be avoided, because sun has got these two things. Particles are useful for us. The heat may be harmful if we are exposing ourselves beyond the irritation. As simple as that. The heat will be, any kind of heat will be harmful if we are exposing ourselves beyond the irritation. Irritation is the indication of the voice of the organism that we should remove ourselves from that exposure of the heat. As simple as that. All these stories of sunscreen and I don't know what are the proposals, those are assumption based proposals. We may opt to ignore those. Right? Okay, air. Air is the most, yes.
I
Yes,
have
sir.
a few patients or even many patients in derma OPD that is called polar urticaria in medical term. Whenever they expose to sun, even for a few minutes, they develop urticaria. So what is this? You mean to say as soon as patient went out in open space and sunlight is exposed and there is irritation in the skin, so he must not go for
Yeah,
radiation.
for the initial phases, if it creates discomfort, they must not go. But one needs to understand that the reason is not the solar radiation, reason is the already present toxin inside the body. This understanding has to be there
Yes,
in the individual.
clearly understood earlier, but for sake, people were asking, so this thing came in my mind and for
Yes, yes, yes. So
understanding.
you can recommend them not to go to the sun initial phases, but the allergy. This is called allergy also, solar allergy they say. But
Yeah,
all kinds of allergy.
I was having earlier, but nowadays I have seen this is diminishing day by day.
Yes, yes. So all allergies are the triggers of toxemia. Already toxin is there inside. There are some substances the reasons, these kind of reasons are exploring of these reasons are actually spending time for nothing, but we need to understand the meaning of triggers that triggers the expulsion of the toxin which is already present. So we need to focus on the internal toxin for its reduction through the conservation of vitality. Then these triggers will become irrelevant, right?
Okay.
So air is the most important primary element. Air is the most important primary element. Why it is so important? Because air is the consistent food that we give to our body. We can survive without sunlight for many years perhaps. We can survive without water for few days. We can survive without food for few months, even for few weeks even. But without air, surviving for few minutes will be very difficult. So this is the primary element, and consistently we give that to our body, this food. This is the primary food, right? So we need to understand the meaning of active RDB. In Pure Nature Cure, we don't recommend any separate breathing exercise, because breathing is a 24/7 activity that we do, and that 24/7 activity has to be done with all the other activities that we perform in day-to-day life. That is why this term is active RDB, rhythmic diaphragmic breathing. So active means we are involved in some or other work, but we are breathing. We know that. So we need to be mindful about the breathing while doing other work. It is not that separately we have to sit and breathe for 1 hour. That's not recommended. We need to be very mindful about breathing while doing other things. While doing other things, maybe that is exercise. So while doing exercise also, breathing has to be synchronized. We'll talk about that. Now, what is RDB? Rhythmic diaphragmic breathing. Breathing actually should fill up the diaphragm. Diaphragm should inflate. Right. So this RDB means we are filling the diaphragm, filling the lungs completely. And breathing do have these 4 steps.
Sir, one thing I will like to say, when you take breathe in, at that time diaphragm deflate, that goes down, that do not inflate. Inflate, that is comes up.
Yes,
To
sorry.
go down.
Yes, you're
That
right. You're right. You're right. So diaphragm goes down so that the lungs can be filled. So breathing in is the filling of the lungs, and breathing out is emptying the lungs. We understand that. Now, a breathing has got 4 steps in one cycle. 4 steps in one cycle. Breathing in, holding. Breathing out, holding. Breathing in, holding. Breathing out, holding. Right? How much time do you have for this session?
Sir, less than
a minute.
Less than a minute?
Yeah.
Right. So let's start from that point, having 2-3 minutes of silence. Right? We'll end the session now, and we'll resume with the explanation of RDB. There's a chat.
Okay.
Setting is an indication. Okay. Thank you.